Welcome to Church History Tuesday, short stories from church history to inspire us today. We've been talking about John Calvin, and I wanted to finish our discussion on him by talking about why you should be reading John Calvin. I'm a big reader. You might notice that from the bookshelf behind me, but I believe there's immense value in reading, and I think there's immense value in reading theological topics, and there's immense value in reading old theologians who came before us and struggled and processed through what it means to follow God and what the Bible is saying and how we're supposed to be as Christians. I think there's great value in going back to those sources and reading them. I love the quote by C.S. Lewis who says, "It's good after reading a new book, never to allow yourself another new one until you have read an old one." This idea that, hey, instead of just going and reading the books of our time, it's actually good sometimes to make a pattern of going back and reading some of those heroes of the faith, going back and reading some of those books that are written maybe a long time ago, but they still are rich because these are strong thinkers who help us understand what it means to follow Christ. And I think John Calvin is just such a theologian. I've read a few of his works, and I would strongly recommend them to anyone and everyone. Of course, when you talk about John Calvin, you have to recommend the Institutes, his kind of groundbreaking theological work that was edited and expanded over time. And this 2-volume set, I think, is a great, accessible way to read him. And when you read it, I would challenge you. Sometimes we think of theology as dry or kind of stale or, just kind of heady knowledge. But when you read John Calvin, you will be blown away of how pastoral he is. He's amazing how he can take these really high, intense subjects and apply them in a pastoral way. And just when I was looking at this and thinking about what to share from the Institutes, just how he opens up about how there's two types of knowledge of self and knowledge of God, and how we need both of those, and how the knowledge of God actually influences us. He says this, again, "It is certain that man never achieves a clear knowledge of himself unless he has first looked upon God's face, and it descends from contemplating him to scrutinize himself." He is pastoral in saying that knowledge of God always serves this purpose of actually enlightening us on our own condition and how we fall short of God. And so if you're a reader, if you're a theology buff, check out his Institutes. You will not regret it. Now, if you are into that theology, another great work where he is responding to a critic of him is his book, The Bondage and Liberation of the Will. And so if you want to dive into Calvin's articulation of what people would call Calvinism today, about freedom of the will and the bondage of the will, this is a book that you can dive into and get some of that deeper thinking that could encourage you. But we're not all there. And sometimes maybe we don't have time to do those deep dives, or maybe that's not how we're bent or wired by God, to those deep dives in theology. And so there's great, actually small, accessible works that have been edited from John Calvin that we can grab and understand, and they can encourage us. You can pick up small little books like this. It's Truth for All Time, written by John Calvin. And just looking through this, he's talking through the faith, and he has this kind of statement under the Lord's Prayer, under the statement of, hallowed be your name. He says, whatever God does, his actions must be considered glorious as they truly are. What a profound statement. Just think for a moment. Take that quote right there and wrestle with it. Whatever God does, we must truly consider it glorious, for it truly is. How amazing is that? That's the God we worship. That we remind us that even when we don't understand it, we can trust that is our God. And you can get great little quotes like that and things to ponder from just smaller work like this, which is Truth of All Time by John Calvin. Or you can pick up just a little book on the Christian life. Again, it's kind of distilled version, distilled teaching from John Calvin. And we can take it and we can read it. It's insightful. And it can move us to be a better follower of Christ. And he talks about what it means to be a Christian, about how bearing our cross is part of this self-denial. And he says, if then we want to be disciples of Christ, we should make it our aim to soak our minds in a sort of sensitivity and obedience to God that can tame and subdue every natural impulse contrary to his command. Sing with that. We want to follow Christ. He says we soak our minds in a sort of sensitivity and obedience to God. We marinate our very souls or how we think in this idea that we're going to follow him so that our natural sinful impulses to something contrary to his command can be smothered, can be done away with. And that happens when we saturate our minds with the things of God. Again, that comes from a little book on the Christian life by John Calvin. It's good to read. Yes, maybe right there is a shocking statement to a lot of people because we're moving so far away from reading. But it's good to read. I think when you read, you're interacting with the words and ideas in ways that even just dialoguing with people or listening to a video is not that. I think there's something special in the fact that we have the Word of God, that we read it and we process it through that, along with hearing it aloud and along with talking about it and studying it. But we process it by reading it and knowing it. So it's right and true that we should pursue this theological knowledge from all the sources we can, even old ones, and be encouraged by it. So I would encourage you that maybe picking up an old Puritan or picking up an old theologian or picking up John Calvin's maybe smaller books, or maybe you even want to go into the deeper books and just dialoguing with him as you read upon the page about just who our God is and how he's ordered this world and how he's established our faith. Take up and read.